apologize. That was probably so loud. I didn't realize how loud that was until I just checked my audio settings. That was probably blasting. I apologize. I'm going to leave it as background beat, though. But yeah, man, I wanted to go live quickly for this. This kind of like trickled out throughout the day, and then it just smacked us in the face. And I was like, dang, okay, so this is a thing. This is a thing. Like, this morning, there was like some little buzz. And when I first got the report that like he was really considering Chicago, I was like, oh man, for real? That's still on the table? That's still a thing? And then bam, I'm going to Chicago. And then it's like, yo, look, I'm bringing all these dudes with me too. It's like, okay, things happen fast. Here we go. I know the Colts just hired their defensive coordinator too. So I wanted to go live because it's faster than making a video. And I'm going to be live at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Bleacher Report. It's free if you have the app. I'm going to be live over there. And because that's scheduled, I'm going to really dive into this. So if you guys want to see more of a deep dive on kind of like the replacements, this will be kind of like my first step towards that. And that's what I'll do over there because I haven't got through the offensive side that far. I was actually focusing on the defensive side, and then this news happened. I was like, because I was pretty sure Aaron Glenn was going to leave, and I think that's going to happen. But the offense, I wasn't completely sure. Well, I guess I should have been, and here we go. So I guess I got to focus offense first, and then I'll transition over to defense. But that's 6 p.m. Eastern. So here I thought I had to give y'all some content. We got to just react to what the heck just happened because Ben Johnson is officially off to Chicago. Also, this quick live stream is being brought to you by BetUS. Use that code YouTube150. You're still looking to make some sports betting. The playoffs are happening. College football championship tonight. Use YouTube150 for your code. Actually, let's get a quick little peek at that real quick because we haven't checked out what BetUS is rocking right now, and I want to see what's going on over here. I want to see some of these lines, man. Okay, I'm trying to embrace. I'm trying not to be sad. I'm trying to just embrace that we got a few more games left in the NFL season, and I did watch Sunday, all right? I watched Sunday kind of in the back. I didn't really watch the Baltimore game. I'll be honest, I didn't watch that one. I was just editing. But I did watch the Rams game a little bit. I wasn't happy. I didn't care who won. I was hoping they'd both lose. That didn't happen, unfortunately. But I did check it out because it was football. And we have a couple games left now here. We got to almost pick them between Buffalo and Kansas City. I think almost every single NFL fan is rooting for Buffalo, and then there's Kansas City fans, and then there's Taylor Swift fans. So, yeah, most people are pulling for Buffalo. I will as well. And then we got Washington plus 5.5. It's an interesting line, much smaller than our line, and on the line, and on the road, too, there. We can go really straight up for this. So, 10-piece gets me a 10-piece? Oh, come on, man, you're going to be playing with. All right, so if you want to get on that, man, YouTube 150, that's the code, shot the BetUS. 150% deposit match on your first deposit, 125% on the next two deposits, up to $2,000. Use that as your sign-up bonus. All right, chat. Let's talk through this, man. There's a lot of people that are upset in the chat. I see it. I see it off in the distance. I see it in the background. Let me first say this, man. I definitely understand Ben Johnson taking this job. Like if we took the fact that they're in our division out of it for a second, and you were like, whoa, what's the best opportunity, I think, for a young not a young offensive coach, but just for an offensive coordinator that's trying to get that first look. When you looked at the jobs that were actually available, to me, that was by far the best opportunity. And man, he's going to have a boatload of weapons to work with. We saw him. We handled business a couple times this season, but they have dudes across the board at weapons. And Caleb Williams was messy this year. And look, man, some of that's on him. There's no question. Even the numbers say, like, yeah, some of this is on Caleb taking off. But it's not, I think, as massive as at times it was made out to be. Like, there is real problems on that O-line. He's going to come in, have to address it immediately. But they have tons of weapons. They're not paying their quarterback, so there's flexibility there. They're getting high draft picks again because they were bad this season. It makes a ton of sense. I understand it. I get it. If that's something that he wanted to go do is be a head coach, you go for it. It's competition, man. This isn't one of those. This is sport. It should be competition. It should be rivalry. Like, let's roll, man. If that's what it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. I actually kind of love the element of it. I hate it because I would have loved for him to be here. I liked him on our side. I'm sad as heck. Ben Johnson is the best coach that I've ever seen, I think, for the Lions, like in terms of positional coaches. I mean, I've never spotlighted a positional coach like I had Ben Johnson. This dude was insane. And I'm sad as heck that he's gone because I thought he had a great game plan this last game. But in terms of competition, it kind of fires me up a little bit. Like, there's going to be an extra element to those games, man. He's going to be an absolute handful. He's going to be a handful. He's going to get Caleb right. It's good for Caleb Williams. So I understand it. I do understand it, man. You want to take a position where, and hopefully for his sake, the top isn't a mess. You know, hopefully it's not a mess where it's like, oh man, there's issues going on here, then they want to move on from them and things just don't. Hopefully the top is okay over there. And this is like gives them a real opportunity because, yeah, from not getting stuck in a really bad spot with the roster, the Bears are probably the best spot to be. You fix the offensive line, you put Caleb in much more positions to be successful, manage the clock much better. You got something there, man. You got something there. And I thought they'd be really good this year. If you guys remember, I thought they'd be a playoff team this year. So I was surprised at how big of a letdown that was. Now, defensively, I think they were a bigger letdown than most people expected. But they were a pretty major letdown this past season. And defense really took a step back with some of their injuries. That wasn't the same, especially once they fired Eberflus. That thing really took a step back. So they got to address that as well. But it's I think it's a good spot. On paper, I think it's a good spot for Ben. I just hate it because he's dead to us. I'm with it, man. I'm with the competition aspect. I mean, he's an animal. He's a dog, man. I got a lot of love for Ben, man, and what he did with this offense. Here's why I got a lot of love for it. I got a lot of love for the situation, how it played out. You know, like the whole thing, and we heard Dan Campbell speak today, and we can even pull that up, but Dan Campbell spoke today. I wonder if they clipped it at all, about like the input on the next offensive coordinator, Jared Goff having the input, how important that would be. And that's what I love with Ben is that the opportunity set up for two guys for the first time taking on these, not for the first time, it was really the first time it felt like Jared Goff was ever that involved in an offense. And it was like, yo, they want you here. This isn't like the Rams where they kind of just bring things around you and then it goes bad. It's like, all right, move off him. This is different. This was like, yo, we're building around you here. And they trusted him through it. And they were able to tie a first-time offensive coordinator with him that had that freedom as well to kind of like, let's mold together, let's grow together, let's figure out what this thing could turn into. And man, he made it work, man. He looked at this offense and what it could be for sure, what Jared Goff could be, and they put that thing together. You know what I mean? This was a incredible offense every year. So they were fantastic together. I'm grateful for that they were able to make that happen with the first-time offensive coordinator. It's fantastic. I got a lot of love for that dude. But now that he's gone, yeah, I'm excited for those matchups. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to be happy watching those dang trick plays. Hey, hopefully when he shouted out Seth, was it Seth Meyers or was it Seth Williams? I think it's Seth Williams, not Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers is a stand-up guy. Seth Williams, shout out JT Barrett for all the trick stuff. Man, hopefully they were that involved and they continue to be that involved because I don't want that stuff to just be gone. The creativity was endless, you know, and we all kind of point to Ben with all these things, but man, all of those dudes, bro, whoever that was, let's continue to have that be a part of this offense. Man said Jared Goff will be our OC next year. So I think for us, and I'll get to this more at 6 p.m. on Bleacher Report. Tune in for sure. And that's why I won't make this super long because I have to go get prepared for that, especially now. I got to really start to dive into this thing. But right now, with where we're at staff-wise offensively, I think the most likely options are very clearly Tanner Engstrand, who is currently our pass game coordinator, that he would step in. He's going to be the OC. Or it's going to be Hank Fraley. And I don't think it's going to be Hank Fraley. I just say that because he was offered an interview. I don't even know if he took I think he took the interview for an offensive coordinator position. So I would say that's on the table. But I think clearly those feel like the two guys. And then there's also Scotty Montgomery, who was thrown in there this morning. I think I saved it. Let me make sure. Let me see if I saved that when they threw in Scotty Montgomery into that conversation. Pull that up. Because we got the first, this morning it said candidates expected to receive consideration to replace Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn include Scotty Montgomery, who is our assistant head coach / running back coach, Tanner Engstrand, and Calvin Shepard. And then they went to the report of Lions OC is much more ready to take a job now than he was in the past couple years. I wonder, too, of that kind of whole process of, like, there's got to be a lot that goes into that. Like, bringing in, figuring out who's going to be your coaching staff. Like, it sounds like Dennis Allen's going there. It sounds like that's just going to happen now. Like, making that all happen. Like, how much time that actually takes to put that thing together. I'm sure that plays a role in it as well. But I think he is going to Chicago is what they said. So, that'll be it would have been, I think, a good fit here schematically. It's interesting. It'll be real interesting. But I get it. It's kind of staying in the same path. And we'll have to see how that plays out because that's what's kind of up in the air. I assume AG will get a coaching job. I think today it came out. I think it came out today that if he was offered the job by the Jets, he would take it. and I guess that's on Tuesday potentially that could happen. So if he's offered the position to be the Jets head coach, that he's going to accept that position. I think it's kind of what it is. And then if that hasn't happened, New Orleans Saints are still on the table. I think he's probably going to go to the Jets. I don't know how many assistants love that idea of going to the Jets as their first job, but I think with his connections there, and I think the leadership style, I think he's looking at that as a mess and seeing opportunity. He sees opportunity, sees a ton of talent on defense. I mean, you think about it, like Ben Johnson could have seen the same thing. There's a ton of weapons over here. There's a lot that I can build off of, and a lot of it feels like the issues are going to come back to what is the coaching like to get that thing rolling offensively. I think that Aaron Glenn probably has a similar vision for the defense. He sees what they're capable of, just like Ben's going to see what they're capable of with Caleb. I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Johnson implemented a little bit more, quarterback design runs with Chicago. Like what can we actually bring out of this guy? And then the passing attack, yeah, I mean, like, there's just tons of dudes. There's tons of dudes there. We got those ultimately what helped us is eventually we got those players through the draft and we got them through the Jared Goff trade. A lot of that was the weapons that we have now. They got those because they've just been bad for years. So it's like in their own path, they're kind of in a similar boat. We'll see, how that plays out. They got to figure out defense too as well now. But that's why I think Aaron Glenn would take the Jets job. I know they have a mess at quarterback, but I think he's looking at the talent defensively, says we can do this. And I don't think he's too. I think Aaron Glenn's kind of that leader that would we're gonna shut down all this noise. This guy's out. We're gonna figure this out. We're moving off from Aaron Rodgers. Maybe we make it work. I don't know. But that's not going to be the storyline anymore with the Jets. So I'd understand both of those spots. This makes sense for me for Ben. No job is going to be perfect, but as long as the upper management is solid, that's going to be everything. As long as that's solid at the top, I think he's going to be in a good spot. If that's a mess, then unfortunately it could become a mess really fast. Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of growing pains with that. But, man, I'm going to be honest. Going back a year, I was surprised the dude even came back this year. I mean, I don't think many of us expected him to come back. We were all kind of shocked that he did. So, it was awesome to get him for an extra year. Yeah, I hate that that's how it ends. That was a stinky ending, man, for it to go down like that. But, yeah, I think Tanner Engstrand's a favorite. If I had to guess, he's 42 years old. The guy's been an offensive coordinator twice. Lower levels. He was in the XFL for the DC Defenders. Now, he didn't actually call plays that year from what I know so far. It was actually Pep Hamilton. I've watched a little bit of him. He actually calls plays. He actually would call the plays, and they weren't great offensively that year. They actually scored 86 points in, 5 games, so it wasn't great. But then he was also the offensive coordinator at San Diego, smaller college, but at San Diego, they were amazing statistically, and he was the offensive coordinator there from 2011 to 2017, plus he was the assistant head coach eventually. He just kept adding promotions to that. And the crazy thing is the next step was go from there to go to Michigan as an offensive analyst. That feels like a crazy step. You go from assistant head coach to offensive analyst is a crazy step. But yeah, that's pretty wild, man. But I think he's the most likely candidate because he's the pass game coordinator. Dan Campbell said that it was going to matter a lot of what Goff's input was going to be. Based on the way that he answered those questions, I assume that they're really I would be pretty shocked if they went out of house for either side. I think it's more likely they go out of house for defense. I think that's more likely that they would go find somebody that's not in the building for the defensive side because Dan said he wants to play man coverage. I think with out of the house options, there might be a little bit more flexibility there in terms of we want to be aggressive, we want to play man, we have that. But there's guys that will do that. And I think things can change a little bit stylistically. You want to keep it consistent though, and I think Dan's right on that just because of simply personnel we built. We need to keep things consistent on both sides. And for the success that we had offensively, Dan Campbell pointed out him being an offensive guy. I mean, we forget Dan Campbell took over play calling one year and things were better. And it was okay, Dan, see, that's what gets forgot out there. It's Dan Campbell you lose the guy, he doesn't know what he's going to do. This guy was calling plays for us. And that's when we heard who Ben Johnson was. He was yeah, he was involved helping me out here, kind of finding these little things. So I'm comfortable with him picking a head coach. I think it's great that he's going to take a lot of the involvement of that. He's going to put a lot of that on his plate to get that thing right offensively. So I think he'll go in the house there because I think he wants to keep things consistent. And I think he even pointed out specifically the passing attack. That's something that he wants to keep kind of consistent. So I assume he's just going to go right from his coaching staff. And my guess would be Tanner Engstrand's just going to step in. I mean, the guy's been, you get Hank Fraley, he's been an offensive line coach. That's kind of been his path, right? He was a player, offensive line, and he's been an offensive line coach. This dude, Tanner's kind of bounced around from everywhere. Now, I don't know enough yet. Again, we're going to break it down to 6, but from what I've seen so far, it just makes sense. The path just makes a ton of sense. And yeah, it lines up with Jared Goff. If he's working directly with him in the passing game, it would just make too much sense, I think, for them to go elsewhere. But again, defense, I think, is more open. If Glenn leaves, I think that they could go a different route potentially there. And look, I'm going to be honest, even schematically, I thought defensively there was things that weren't great in this last game. And we've had that on both sides. You know, we've had our struggles, but I almost feel like a lot of things, and this is fairly for the defense, like defensively, personnel is not as good as offense right now. With where we're at health-wise, defensively, personnel is not as good. But I do feel like a lot of the things offensively, with the addition, or I would say the growth of a guy like Jameson Williams, some of the things that we had problems with the year before kind of felt like they weren't really an issue anymore. Like, I don't think there was really a game this year, outside of maybe Tampa Bay in week 2, where it felt like we were kind of struggling to move the ball. Tampa Bay week 2 was the best example. It was an ugly start to the season. I'd have to go back and look on that one, but the way that they were playing like their cover 3 and they were kind of funneling everything inside, that's not something that was just unique to them. Like, we had seen that in future games as well. So I think that offensively, once we kind of got the personnel to get to a certain point, there wasn't a game where it felt like, okay, we don't have answers for this. At least I don't think we saw that at all. I think we've seen times where defensively it felt like that. But in fairness to Aaron Glenn, he doesn't have the personnel like the offense does. Like, there's limitations that he's got to work through. So I even think like I said, I think we figured things out, but I think some of the run game scheme defensively was not great in this last game against Washington, and that showed up as a real issue. I think I saw someone in the chat say Mike McCarthy declined. He declined the Bears' job, is what you're saying? Wow. See, I thought that would be, and that's why I thought this wouldn't be a thing. I thought he'd go to Chicago, and bam, we're good to go. Him declining the job. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, dog. Now I just like Mike McCarthy even less. You know what I mean? Appreciate you, G. J-Mo could have thrown it, his choice. Could have not thrown it. Oh, okay, I think they're in a conversation. See, that's the problem. If I just read random chats, I don't know what conversation people are having. Then it doesn't make any sense. K's in the boss. You, Dan Campbell said Goff will have a lot of, say, new coordinators. I think that he has to, because I think it's coming in-house. That's why I think it's going to happen in-house. Because I feel like if it's something that's on the outside, or if it's like the beginning of Jared Goff, you go outside, you bring in a guy that you think you trust that guy, that kind of thing. But Campbell having his footprint all over the offense and kind of how he wants it to look, and then maybe the details will handle that to the offensive coordinator. To me, that almost screams that it's going to be one of the options in-house. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels like that for sure because of that reason. Like, yo, if he's comfortable with this guy, we're going to roll with this guy. And then you just keep it going from there, because that's the one thing this offense needs, is they figured it out. You know, and look, Goff was successful with McVay, and what they were doing offensively was different than what we are doing now, but they were successful, and then some things fell apart. But I think that because of the investment that they made upon themselves to be like, yeah, we're going to believe in this guy, we trust him even though things are bad, we're not looking to bench him, we had to get the style right to fit Goff. And they said that, you know, he was involved in the offseason plans and kind of building everything from scratch. And Jared's never really he didn't have that with the Rams from what we know. So I'm not saying it couldn't work with a different guy. It probably could, because Goff has worked with 2 offensive minds. I don't think the Anthony Lynn thing was as much on Anthony Lynn as I think it was just like, yo, we don't have dudes we were bad. Decker wasn't play. It was bad. I think that was a lot more of it with Anthony Lynn. But I think statistically it did get a little bit better when Campbell took over. I think it got a little bit more like, yo, we're just running the football. And then that's when we felt the Ben Johnson emergence. So I'm confident, because even if we just look at that single example, he did at least have like the wherewithal to be like, yo, something needs to change here. And that could have just been simply we're losing. But it brought to life like Ben Johnson's involvement. And then we heard about him after Minnesota, and it was like, oh, snap, who's this guy? And then he got the job. I think that his ability to recognize that maybe a coaching change could be the best thing for this team. And again, I think that speaks to looking at what we have. That's what Dan does really well, and I think all the assistant coaches have done that pretty darn well. I think Aaron Glenn did it to the point where he would just trust his guys like crazy. Like, he believed in them. He'd put them out there and trust that they had what it takes to get it done. And then I think with the offensive side, we've had a lot of talent over the last few years, so it kind of gets overshadowed. But I think even starting with Dan back to the beginning, like, he's done a great job, just as those guys have, of looking at, like, what do we actually have? How do we have to play this game? I mean, I think of, like, the Baltimore game. You remember Baltimore, was it 20, was that the first year or the second? I think that was the first year. And they just they threw it. I mean, Swift literally was the entire second half. So I think he's done a good job of that, being aware of what he has and getting the most out of it. So I think he'll stay in-house to keep consistency there. My man with the two-piece, D. James ZW. Okay. What up, though? Oh, I see you had I didn't get the up in the box. How'd you do that? He purposely sabotaged us. I didn't think he sabotaged. I mean, look, man, I appreciate the two-piece. I thought the offensive game plan was fantastic last week. I just think that we turned the ball over 4 times. We turned the ball over 4 times, man. Who cares at this point? At least at last performance, I'm ready to see him leave. Wow. Okay, y'all are way different on me on this. I mean, I thought Ben was fantastic in our last game. Now that being said, we didn't execute it, so that's fair. But I'm a miss dude. I'm a miss dude. I know it ended on a sour note, but man, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Tanner Engstrand, new OC? I think so. If I was betting, if that's on BetUS, I don't think it is, but if it is, throw it on Tanner Engstrand. I think that's very likely that's where he's going to go. Tanner Engstrand. And then again, but yeah, they did throw Scotty Montgomery out there. And I think that the potential there for sure is definitely that. Dan Campbell wants to run the ball. He wants to play it a certain way stylistically. And if you go with a guy like Scotty Montgomery, who's the running backs coach, and who clearly has the leadership skills, which he even said when he was looking for offense coordinator, he's like, I want a guy that can command the attention of the room, essentially. Like, he wants to have those leadership qualities to take that role over. And I don't think any of us look at it like Ben Johnson is that loud guy, but we don't really know him like that. You know what I mean? So with that being the case, what we do know is that Scotty Montgomery is always that guy. I mean, this guy was in a spot to potentially get head coaching jobs. So he definitely is going to check that box, we can assume. In the run game, which was really good this year, but he specifically worked with the running backs, that's what his specialty is. So I wouldn't count that out because stylistically, I think Dan likes that. But I think even he pointed out the emphasis has to be on the pass game. That said, it has to be on the pass game, especially in today's NFL, and because of the investment in Goff. You invest in a running back, but it's not the same. Once you invest in that quarterback, it's got to work, because if that doesn't work, nothing's going to work. If Goff's terrible because you focused on the run game, we're going to be bad, or we're not going to be bad, but we're going to be stuck. You know what I mean? And that's why I think that has to come first and foremost. Is that's where the investment is. You have to make sure this thing works. So I think he'll go offense and he'll go pass game, whatever the coach is, outside or inside, and I think he'll just stay within house. If he's willing to take that, if Tanner wants that job. I would assume he does, though, because he's already had been an offense coordinator before. I mean, he's bounced around like crazy. I mean, I would assume that this guy has the ambition to continue to work up the ladder. Just from what we know, it doesn't scream like he's been at one spot. The kind of Hank, he's been an offensive line coach. Even if he gets looked at for OC, does he want to be an OC? I'm not really sure. Possibly, probably. But I'm pretty sure Tanner wants to be an OC. He did it twice. I'm pretty sure he's open to having that. And this time around, he might just be calling play calls versus what he did with the DC Defenders in Cardale Jones at quarterback. Scotty Montgomery or Robert Saleh as our new offensive coordinators. I said I go pass game. I don't hate the Montgomery one. I also like the aspect of a guy that's been here through the process. That doesn't mean that it can't work in Montgomery. This is his first year here. I think there's been a really good process over the last few years of growth on both sides of the ball, specifically on defense. I think that's easier to point out, but I like the growth process that we had. And I think that you get a guy, it's kind of like the Kelvin Shepard thing. If you go after a guy that's been in the mix and he's learned from that's a mess, okay, there's where we get better. I think it's very easy to point out on defense. But I like guys that have been through that, because both of these guys were new OCs at the time. Both these guys were starting from scratch. So I like a guy that was able to kind of be alongside them the whole way, especially if that guy also got promoted along the way. That's where I'm at with it. Let me get this right here. Again, I won't make the show much longer because we're going to go, like I said, I got to prep for the next show at 6. And I want to dive into this offensive coordinator thing a little bit more. But if I had it right, I was trying to get the exact thing here. I don't think I have it. Yeah, man, I think these coaching dominoes are going to fall fast, man. Because I think everybody was kind of waiting for our coordinators. That's what it sounds like. Everybody was kind of waiting for that. And that's interesting, too. I even think of, some of the other guys. Could a guy like Steve Hyden be in the conversation? I doubt it. The tight ends coach. But you had a guy like Tanner Engstrand go from... he went from tight ends coach and pass game coordinator to just pass game coordinator. Does that mean he took on a bit larger role? I mean, by the title, no, but he may have. And then at the same time, with that being the case, now at the tight end position, Steve Hyden steps in. I mean, that was kind of the path for Ben Johnson, was through the tight end role as well. So I think everything's kind of in play. But I just, my guess would be passing game. Did BJ throw the game? No. No. Yo, I don't. No. Unless he told JMO, like, you throw this no matter what, or you're never playing again or something. No. Like, it was, offensively had a great plan. If you want my take, I thought it was a fantastic plan. We just turned the ball over too many times. Well, Dan did say he's going to be patient. He said he's not going to hurry into this thing, which again speaks to the fact that he's probably going to go in-house for both of these hirings. That'd be my guess. I think defense has more likely potential to go outside. Even just looking at some of the top defense coordinator names, I don't know where you'd go right now. I had an early list on it. I don't know where you go. If Dennis Allen's gone, then you're probably going with guys either at the college level, like Notre Dame, or yeah, there's a couple guys at the college level that you're probably picking up from. Matt Eberflus, which I'm assuming that's not going to happen. But he's still available, and he's been available, because obviously he got fired. So I don't think that tons change between now and then. I would have been surprised when a Lou Anarumo one, just because of where it's been the last few years. I would have been surprised if you would have went that direction. Like, yeah, let's go get that guy. I think Kelvin Shepard's most likely on defense. He did specifically, though, bring up Terrell Williams. He brought up Terrell Williams specifically. I think there's a lot of good options in-house, though, defensively. I like Kelvin Shepard because, again, I like that he's been here. I like that Kelvin Shepard stepped in, different scheme, outside linebackers coach. That was when we had Trey Flowers. That was when we had Romeo. Then became the inside backer coach, and again, different scheme at the time. And then he's turned into the entire linebacker coach. But he's been here since the beginning of that process. Plus, before he got here, he was in player development at LSU. So just based on that alone, player development, like, okay, that's something I'm intrigued by when you talk about developing these young guys, because that's what Lions are full of. And if you just took his resume of what he's done with the linebackers, like Jack Campbell just had his best season in year 2, right? I got to give him some credit for that. The guy was outstanding this year. Alex, we kind of know what Alex is, but it was a situation of, like, we had to work through a lot of guys. And linebacker was one of the deepest spots coming into the year. Like, the depth that we had. We lost Barnes. We lost Rodriguez. He's got Trevor Nowaski stepping in. Like, the linebacker was one of our deepest spots this season. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but it was super deep. So I think Kelvin Shepard's great because I like the fact that he's been here all years. I love that. I love the fact that we can continue to roll through, like, the growth that he's had along. Because I think you go with a guy like Terrell Williams, who is now our defensive run game coordinator and defensive line coach, which is great. His background is just that. It's being a defensive line coach. It's being a run game coordinator, which honestly, in fairness, here's my concern. And it's just immediate before we get, too deep into this, is like, I didn't think the run game defense was that great. If I'm being honest, like, I thought that was the problem this season. So again, not on him. A lot of that's personnel wise, but I didn't think it was fantastic. I can understand where you would buy into the leadership that we know. He's been an assistant head coach before. That's what he was known for coming in. And obviously, he brought a guy like Kyle Pecco, who there was familiarity with. I think Levi had his best season this year. So if we're looking at it from individual players, he had his best season. Was that just because he was healthy? Well, probably a little bit of both, but he was fantastic this season. And then Jack Campbell, that would be more to the linebacker room. But, I mean, out of that defensive line, you just missed a lot of dudes. But the injuries killed us, but I just didn't love the run scheme. Like, if I'm pointing at that, and it's a hard answer, and I don't even know if this is on him. This could be just on Glenn. But I look at that last game, and I don't think that it worked. Like, some of that wasn't player to me. I was like, you could put any linebacker out there. I don't think this is going to work. That may have been more on Glenn in that spot and what their plan was coming into the game. I just didn't think it's like you could put any backer in that position that you're asking Jack or Alex to play, because they constantly put Jack out of the box and they just went at him. It's like if I replaced Alex with the best linebacker in football, like, I don't know that this is a lot better. I just think that we're not in good spots here. That being said, though, because I think Reeder played well. I think Reeder has played well. He's been pretty consistent. But Reeder's, you know what you're going to get out of Reeder. You just didn't get those flash plays out the DNs. And I'm not even someone that's, like, upset about the pass rush. I don't have any issues with that. I have no issues with that. I'm talking about the run game coordinator sense. So, not saying he's not very capable of taking the job, and I assume that the fact that he brought his name up specifically, he's definitely in play for this spot, and it seems like he's looking for that opportunity to continue to step forward. But I think Deshea Townsend's another great option too, because Deshea, the problem is, again, it's newness. Just like Terrell, you're going immediately to that. But Deshea Townsend he's worked his way up from DB coach to, secondary coach to, I mean, taking over the entire cornerback room and the defensive pass game coordinator. Like, this guy has continued to kind of work his way up there. He had connections with Vildor, brought him in. I got a lot of graphics on him. And the secondary has had a fantastic season. Like, if you're just talking about positional groups, to me, that position group has been the best, and it fits perfectly with what Dan Campbell wants to do stylistically. Clearly, he wants to play man, and clearly this guy made it work. So that guy makes a ton of sense to me, 49 years old. I think the Shea Townsend makes a ton of sense, but him being here for 1 year is the pullback for me a little bit. I don't love that. When it was Ben hired by Dan Campbell or Matt Patricia, he was hired before Dan Campbell. He was hired before Dan Campbell, yeah. I think he was. Are you talking about Ben Johnson? Actually, I don't know. I think he was hired before Dan. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys that have kind of crossed over. Even Tanner Ingstrad, I think, falls into that category. Is the guy that crossed over here. If I remember right. I think 2020 he became our offensive assistant. So yeah, he would have been a crossover too. Yeah. One of the two coordinators has to have experience in the league. Has to have experience in the league. In what way? Like, well, here's the thing I'd say. So I don't know if you're talking like player or, again, this is a similar path. I mean, neither of these guys were coordinators. Aaron and Ben were both not coordinators, unless we're looking for something different. Neither of those guys were coordinators when they stepped in here. Ben worked his way up from tight end to boom, getting into that spot. Aaron Glenn was a secondary coach that had the connection, so I think that helps too, him already being there. But based on that alone, man, I don't know. Dan just seems like the kind of guy that's just going to stick with what he has. Let me get this pulled up real quick. But I'm always open to ideas, so if y'all have coaching ideas, man, send them over. I'm going to be looking into all this stuff. I assume this is going to take some time. I don't think this is going to happen immediately. So I'm open to any ideas. No, Ben actually came here in 2019. He actually came here in 2019. Yeah, and then he was it's a very similar path to Ingstrand, because he started as a quality control coach just like Ingstrand did. He went offensive assistant to quality control coach. So did Ben Johnson. And then he went to tight end coach just like Tanner Ingstrand did. He kind of followed right directly in the footsteps, and then he became the passing coordinator. And right now, Tanner Ingstrand is the Lions pass game coordinator, and then he became our offensive coordinator. So it's pretty much the exact same steps that he took along the way. I don't think this makes him a snake, man. It's an opportunity. It's a hard opportunity to get, and I think roster-wise, this is the best opportunity. I mean, I don't love that he stayed in the division, but I don't hate the. I mean, if you told Dan, I mean, I think you kind of love the competition aspect of it. I think that's what Ben's. I mean, from Ben's perspective, he's going to a team that's been a disaster, right? And it's like, yo, I got to go beat now Dan Campbell. That's fun. I don't think that's him just taking a head coaching job is definitely not that kind of move. Like, I perfectly fine with that. I understand it. I didn't want it to happen, but for his sake, completely understand it. Like, if I was in his shoes, it'd be hard for me not to want to go be a head coach. You know, like if I had those aspirations, it'd be hard for me to be like, yeah, I don't want to be a head coach. Everybody wants you, and you find a spot that makes sense. You got a lot of flexibility. We got dudes all over the place. You see the potential of what that could be. I mean, I'll probably take that job, man. I want to be that dude. So I don't have no issue with it. I have an issue with the fact that he's gone. That's sad because he was an animal, but I get it. But yeah, I want to leave that here, man. I don't want to make this too long just because, like I said, 6 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to go live again on Bleacher Report, so download the app. And I'm going to try to give a little bit more detail on where I think maybe the next step is for the Lions. And we're going to focus on offensive coordinator because we'll have to revisit this, I'm sure. But because defensive coordinator doesn't really matter, I think, right now. I might touch on it a little bit, but I think we got to focus on offensive coordinator. That's the problem. I was focusing on defense coordinator today, and then they went offensive coordinator. So now I got to go that way. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. That's the question, right? That's a responsibility, man. It changes everything when you have to be responsible for all the little things. And we know that with Dan year one. Like, Dan was like, yo, I forgot to schedule this certain practice. Like, y'all remember the issues there. And I think you just have to have the right personality for it. You have to have the right mindset of like, okay, I'm willing to grow. Things are going to be messy and bumpy along the ride. I'm going to make dumb mistakes. And you have to just embrace those and be like, all right, we're going to fix this. I just won't do that again. You know, it's not going to be perfect. I'm sure it's going to be some ugliness, but that's why you need the ownership and the front office that's like that's patient, that when they hire you, it's because they believe that this is going to work. And it's like, it's not as necessarily just results based year one and like, oh, here's your record, this is if you get keep or not. Like, no, we understand that this is going to take some time, kind of like a draft prospect. That's why we invested in you. So hopefully he gets that. Hopefully for his sake, he gets that and he's able to kind of stay with that. And it doesn't become, it doesn't become a mess up there. Salah's, we know what Salah is. Salah's fantastic. And Salah would probably fit too. I mean, it'd be a little bit different. It'd be different. But yeah, he's done a great. I know he was offered like crazy money to go back to San Fran. So I'm on board. I'm open to Salah, no doubt. That defense, I'm really open to defense for them going outside of house. I just think offense stays where they're at. And then they brought over Dennis Allen. Yeah. That's where I'm at, man. And you know those guys too. Like, you know what they're gonna do. So it's like, I don't think you would promote a guy and then be like, oh, I'm surprised he's acting like this. Like, no, you know what you got. You know what you got when you promote a dude. Yeah, man. So I guess I'll leave it there. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. Shout out to the 2 donos in the chat. I appreciate you. Shout out to BetUS, YouTube 150. That's the code. Ben Johnson going to Chicago. Ben Johnson's play call be easy to figure out, especially, well, I don't know that it'll be easy. I want to agree with you. I don't think it's easy to figure out. And I just think it's tough to stop. But he's got to put that O-line together. If we're talking about personnel, O-line has to get put together. And that's going to be the challenge over there, is drafting offensive linemen. Because they got a guy, maybe, in a right tackle. Everything else is super shaky. They need to get that right. But I think he'll do good with Caleb. So, yeah, this is saddening, but it's here. So it's kind of just like ripping the Band-Aid off. There was no, like, build up to this, really. It was kind of like, yeah, it's going to happen. It's like, okay, I gotcha. This morning was a little bit of something, and it just went down. So, we'll keep it moving. It's not that I don't like Mark Brunell. I don't think that he wants the job. I don't want to speak for him. I just don't think that if Mark Brunell doesn't give me the vibes that he's looking for that. I think he feels content. I think he's content with where he's at. Could be wrong, though. Maybe he does want that. My guess is that he's content being where he is as a quarterback coach. The relationship with Goff, just kind of sticking hip to hip with him. And I think that he's fine within that role. I don't get the sense that he's trying to go become the OC. But I could be wrong. Man, y'all some haters on Ben. Y'all just turned your back like that? That's crazy. I get it. It's kind of crazy. Overrated trick plays? Overrated. I don't know, man. My choice right now is Tanner Engstrand, but we'll see. Got a lot of digging we got to do to figure that out for sure. But that'd be my choice. I don't know the dude at all, but that'd be my choice. Anyways, man, I appreciate y'all joining, man. We'll tap back in soon for sure. Definitely it's a battle now. It's a rivalry. It's going to make it more fun because it was already chippy last year. Now it's going to be outstanding. Chat. You know what I mean? It's going to be a game now. This is going to be like the game of the... Hey, if they become the team that I thought they could be this year, man, woo, hey, no, I'm telling you, these are going to be the 2 best teams in the division, I think. I really think that, man. I love it. But yeah, I think it's confirmed. I don't know if it's like official. I don't know. They've been, Schefter and all those dudes have been throwing those out there. So yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty official. He's dead to us. He's not dead to me. I can understand I get it, man, because I get it. I understand the. You know what I mean? When we play, I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, let's go, Ben, go cook her off. No, but like I don't have any hate for the guy. Like, I get it, man. Do your thing. Work your way up. It's great that he got an opportunity here. And look, man, he took full advantage of it. He did his thing here. He didn't let me down. But it'll just make that game even better now. It'll add an extra element. And I think for both coaches, those will be more fired up to do it. Ben will want to beat us. You know what I mean? And Dan Campbell's going to do everything he can to not let that happen. And especially if you're from within defensively, oh my gosh. I mean, that's going to be something, man. That whoever that defensive, if Calvin Shepard became the defensive coordinator, I know that dude's coming with all the energy for Ben Johnson. That's gonna be amazing football, bro. That's gonna be amazing television. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for that. That's what I'm talking about, okay? That's fantastic. All right, we're going to leave it here, though. Appreciate y'all joining. YouTube 150 is the code for BetUS. We're out, man. I'll see y'all over on Bleacher Report at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm out.